my people, you come through me.
It's time to put away the bluster, stop the macho man routine, and figure out how we can actually work together.
You know that Trump had pulled 45% of the voter in the state of Illinois, 37 in the city of Chicago? That's the statistic. That means that Illinois is turning purple. We're going to turn red.
That's just some of last week's reaction of President-elect Donald Trump coming into office. We've got plenty more reaction. Of course, here with Illinois in Focus Daily, taking a look at some of the things that our elected officials and taxpayers across the state are saying and seeing happen each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily. You can get the latest there. Obviously, there's a lot to be said with a Congress that's going Republican and a presidency that's going Republican. What about Illinois being deep blue? Are we really deep blue? As you heard the public speaker there from the Chicago City Council last week talking about how Illinois is more purple and is expected, at least to that individual, to go red. I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll obviously be watching that in the political realm, but obviously all of this is funded by your tax dollars. And if you get to thecentersquare.com, get the newsletter there, you'll wake up with all of these headlines. But let's hear some of the reaction. Friday, you had Senator Dick Durbin join Governor J.B. Pritzker for an event where they were getting more federal Department of Energy and EPA grants for a variety of things. But obviously Q&A comes up. Durbin is asked to respond to some of Trump's picks for cabinet positions. If you missed the previous segments we had with Casey Harper from the Center Square, breaking down some of the most recent picks, including the FCC chairman, who's going to be leading the Department of the Interior, who's going to be leading DNI, who's going to be leading the Pentagon, and so on. But Durbin was asked particularly about RFK Jr. leading up Health and Human Services. Here's some of what he had to say.
Health and Human Services is a life and death agency. In that agency are Food and Drug Administration to make sure that what we buy and eat is safe, new drugs to make sure that they are safely dispensed to the American public, the National Institutes of Health, the leading health research agency in the world. When we look at this and all the other CDC, we understand that this is one of the most important and sensitive appointments that a president can make. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may be qualified in some areas. He is totally unqualified for this job. He is engaged in quack science and crazy theories right and left and drawn a lot of attention because of it. I fear this man is going to bring those same ideas to the administration of this life and death agency, and that would be a disaster.
So again, Durbin saying it would be a disaster if RFK Jr. gets in there because, he says RFK Jr. peddles what Durbin characterizes as conspiracy theories.
You can slow things down. You can make sure things don't happen. You can start questioning things that the American people take for granted. For 70 years, we put fluoride in our drinking water, believing that reducing cavities in our teeth was a good outcome and it was safe to do so. Now he's raising questions, maybe that's dangerous. Well, you start peddling these theories around the United States, and guess what's going to happen in social media? They're going to be picked up and become gospel truth to a lot of people. You need responsible leadership when it comes to matters of life and death and health and science. And I'm afraid he's not the person I expect to be peddling that kind of message.
So it'd be interesting, is the fluoride debate really going to be as prominent as, say, Durbin puts it out there to be? I mean, it comes down to it. It's the local water supply that makes the decision whether or not to put fluoride in there. I'll let you guys do your own deep rabbit hole dive into the fluoride debate. But, if moods and ideas and outcomes and data changes after 70 years, maybe it's time to, take a look at that. I don't know. Obviously, that's something that we may see come out of a Trump administration under a RFK Jr. Leading the Health and Human Services and other health-related agencies. What about Matt Gaetz? Durbin also had something to say about Matt Gaetz being appointed to be Attorney General for the United States.
Well, just the opposite is true. Here's another man, totally unqualified. Yesterday, I called for the release of the House Ethics Committee report on Congressman Matt Gaetz, which he believed he could resign from Congress and keep from public review. This is a critical part of the question as to whether or not he is worthy to be the leading law enforcement official in the United States of America. I don't think he is, and many Republicans are agreeing with me. So you're asking if those sorts of things discourage me? Just the opposite is true.
So he apparently believes that Republicans will push back hard enough in the U.S. Senate to not allow for Gaetz to be the nominee. But Durbin says, listen, not all the picks from incoming President Donald Trump are bad.
I don't want this to be totally one-sided. Senator Marco Rubio is my friend. We work together on comprehensive immigration reform. We disagree on a lot of political issues, but he is a worthy choice as Secretary of State. And there are others as well. I just want to say I don't know how it will come out, but if the hearings do their job, we'll get to the bottom and ask some basic questions about each of these nominees.
So clearly, Durbin mainly critical of what we've already heard were the controversial picks of like Gaetz, of RFK Jr., I think Tulsi Gabbard's one of them, Pete Hegseth is the other one that's pretty controversial. But what about getting rid of the U.S. Department of Education? That's a policy that the Trump administration incoming might do. The president's talked about it in the past. He says he wants to give that money back to state governments. Well, I asked Governor J.B. Pritzker that question last week. Education financing is a huge issue in Illinois. Property tax dollars are paying considerable amounts for it. The state tax dollars growing $350 million each year to pay for it. Outcomes not the best across the state on average. Would more money from the federal government not being siphoned off by a bureaucracy like the Department of Education be better used locally?
So think about all the people that you know who have gone through special education programs, all funded, I might add, by the federal government. Who would lose out as a result of the decision to do that. Look, we've got a lot that the federal government is a part of. It's about 8 to 10% of most states' education budgets. And to take that away is literally going to be removing education from people who need it.
But he says he wants to return money back to the states.
Great, but what about, are we going to require that special education is a part of what school districts are offering? Because that is what the federal government has been doing, and frankly, we need more, not less.
So the governor seeming to indicate with his initial response to my question there last week was that those dollars would not come back to the states. But I had to interject that indeed, President Trump says that he wants the dollars to go back to the states. So that's Pritzker's response. We've heard it elsewhere as well when it comes to his various appearances on cable news. But even Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson last week talked a little bit about the potential closure of the U.S. Department of Education.
It's really difficult, quite frankly, to understand the mindset of someone like the former president-elect, that would be willing to eliminate the Department of Education. It's really tough to even just understand why he would do that. Right? Public education at the expense of the state, after all, is a Negro idea, the words of W.E.B. Du Bois, right? And so, he doesn't believe in science in any formation. And so there's real environmental issues that we have. We restore the Department of the Environment. I don't even really know what his full position is, on really growing business in our economy. When he is, insisting on.
Clearly, a lot more is going to be said about Chicago and any kind of relationship they have with an incoming Trump administration. But what about the State House? Illinois lawmakers return tomorrow, for the final 3 days of veto session here for the Illinois General Assembly. And Governor Pritzker last week, he said that, Trump coming in, it's going to change things up, but what exactly the legislature needs to do to offset any of what they may see as negative policies from an incoming Trump administration, Pritzker said that he's not too sure on what needs to change right away.
There isn't anything that I can name you right now. I mean, I'm sure that in the discussions that I'm having with the General Assembly, members of the General Assembly, as well as with other governors, things will pop up over the next, little while. But it's not something that I think that we'll have to address during this veto session. I haven't heard anything that has to be addressed right now during this veto session. Having said that, there is time to be able to do that before the January 20th inauguration.
So nothing exactly comes to mind. He's having conversations, but doesn't know of anything immediately. Republicans have a list of things. Here's Republican State Representative Ryan Spain last week spelling out specifics that he says the Illinois legislature needs to hop on to take full advantage of any potential economic growth there may be from an incoming Trump administration.
We need to be preparing ourselves for the expiration and the redrafting of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Remember, in 2017, tax reform was passed by Congress. It expires next year. In Illinois, we have spent that time decoupling ourselves from the federal tax code in order to create additional revenue gimmicks, as Leader McCombie talked about, to pad the state budget. We need to recouple with the federal tax code so that any of the changes that are made to facilitate economic growth can actually benefit us here in the state of Illinois, whether that's changing our estate tax, our depreciation laws, the way we do and offer operating loss carry forwards. We've made deliberate decisions in the state of Illinois to move away from those policies at the federal level. It's time to rejoin so that we can benefit from economic growth that needs to take place. And if I were Governor Pritzker, I would be reaching out to President Trump saying, how can we work to restore our SALT deductions for the state of Illinois that could provide property tax assistance, which is repeatedly one of the main issues that we hear about again and again from our constituents. And we also need to be preparing ourselves from the likely adjustments for not taxing tips and overtime wages. These are the things that we should be working together on now to prepare ourselves for new realities in Washington, D.C.
So is that going to happen in the Illinois General Assembly? We'll be watching and reporting out what happens. If they indeed decide to, go after recoupling with the federal tax code to deal with state and local tax deductions, the estate tax, tipping, should Illinois mirror what the federal government might do with Republicans at the helm in Congress and Trump at the Oval Office when it comes to taxing on tips, taxing on overtime, taxing on Social Security and such? We'll be watching all of this. Hopefully you see the importance of staying updated here each and every weekday morning with Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. Get the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus.